Welcome to the Online Great Books podcast, brought to you by onlinegreatbooks.com, where we talk about the good life, the great books, great conversation, and great ideas. Thank you for listening. I'm Scott Hambrick, and we got Karl with us today.
Hello.
Well, we have already read, and you should go read, Self-Reliance, an essay by Ralph Waldo Emerson. This is another thing that has been important to me, like Sherlock Holmes. Therefore, Karl has issues with it.
I have a couple issues. I
actually do too.
I like it a lot. There's some things that it presumes that you believe that I think are kind of Emersonian, and we could talk about that as we go. My memory of it is from in the 1980s, a commercial. I don't know for whom it was. Maybe Apple.
God.
But they had this guy reading Ralph Waldo Emerson, and the quote was, "A foolish consistency is the hobgoblin of a little mind," and that's burned in my brain.
Yep.
I don't remember the product that it was for, but it was such a good line. It's got poetry to it and everything, and it made me think. That could be like the summary of the whole thing.
Yep.
Which is, you're not bound by your past. You're not bound. You should think your thoughts as you think them. They're worth something. And you shouldn't be bound by, what's the right thing to think, or what did I think yesterday? It was stunning to me back in 1987 when I heard that, because I thought you should be consistent.
Yeah.
But that's my memory, my vivid memory of this piece.
Let's talk about this thought thing.
Yeah.
Like right in the first paragraph, he talks about thought. For Emerson, authentic, unmediated thought. I don't know, let's call it your first hunch.
Mm-hmm.
Has some sort of divine truth in it. He says a man should learn to detect and watch that gleam of light which flashes across his mind from within, more than the luster of the firmament or of bards and sages. And by the way, I think that he thinks the American male, in particular, has an inner compass that there's something very special about and should be their guide in all that they do.
Right. I mean, even the title, Self-Reliance, you should be self-reliant. Well, why should you be self-reliant? Is it just because that's a way to make more profit? Or you should be self-reliant because he believes there is something fantastically unique and special about you.
And true.
Yeah, and that you need to live up to this, or you're not living. I don't recall him using the word authentic, but modern people would. You're not living an authentic human life. I really like the end of this first paragraph, which bears on what we do. He's talking about works of art. So you go to the museum and you look at the works of art. You should go with what you think of it, which is what we do at Online Great Books. We think that you should think what you think about the Iliad.
Yep.
And not go read what Knox thinks about it or what somebody else thinks about it. And he has this line at the end, "Else tomorrow a stranger will say with masterly good sense precisely what we have thought and felt all the time, and we shall be forced to take with shame our own opinion from another." And so it's a great line. So the problem isn't that Knox is wrong. Knox might be right. He's the guy that writes the introduction to the edition we use. Mm-hmm. I think it's a good introduction.
I do too.
But don't read it.
Yep.
Read it later and you find out that he agrees with you rather than reading it first and finding out that you agree with him.
Don't be a thought cuck. Don't let somebody else think your thoughts, bro.
Yeah, you think them first and then see if other people think the same thing. Or
he would say, just think them and roll in them.
Right, well.
Like alfalfa, He says, I think at the top of the first or the second paragraph, I wrote here, distinctly American. And I think this is, there is a time in every man's education when he arrives at the conviction that envy is ignorance, and that imitation is suicide, that he must take himself for better, for worse as his portion, that though the wide universe is full of good, no kernel of nourishing corn can come to him but through his toil bestowed on that plot of ground which is given him to till. I don't know if America is still that, but I think it was. And when I close my eyes and hope for the best, that's what I want it to be.
Right. Can I complain about something?
Do it. That's my favorite.
It's connected.
You put on your complaining glasses, by the way.
No, I sent a watch back to China to get some warranty work done on it. Cost me $30 to send it back. It's been stuck in Chinese customs for 3 months. U.S. Post Service told me they need to call customs and do it. So I sent the company a note that says, you need to call your own customs people and do it. And they sent it back. Well, we don't have anybody that can do that. We're sorry. And I'm thinking they're sitting in China and they're afraid to call. They're afraid to take any kind of action. You know, and you see this all the time. I used to, back when I had less prosperity than I do now, I took a job for a week delivering, I think it was phone books. And you drive up and down the road and you'd walk up and you'd drop the phone book off at the desk. And I remember walking into one place and saying, well, I've got this phone book for you. And the woman behind the desk was like, well, I don't know. Let me ask my manager. It's like,
right.
You know, she had to make, she was deathly afraid of making a decision. It was a free phone book. She could have dropped it in the garbage after I walked out the door. I was getting like 20 cents a book. She could just take it. But the look in her eyes, she was so frightened. That's when I'm standing up and cheering for Emerson. You know, passages like this. You have to do it. You have to do something.
It is your portion to do it because no one can act for you.
Right. And if a consequence comes, so what? At least you did something.
It's your consequence. Like there's something glorious about it being your consequence. There's nothing a kid hates more than dealing with somebody else's consequence. Like have one of your kids spill a glass of milk and then tell the other one to clean it up. Holy crap.
I didn't spill it.
That's not fair.
Yeah, we're communists about chores here. We try to say, well, it never works, but we try to say all chores are everyone's job.
Right.
And you know what happens? Nobody does any of them. It's a terrible system. We should get rid of it. A little bit later in that paragraph, God will not have his work made manifest by cowards. I love that sentence. There's a lot in that sentence. We could start in the back end of it with cowards. Okay. So if you are afraid to do any sort of action, well, that would make you a coward. But what is it that you're not doing? So the cowards, I think, are the people that, and I've probably been it many times, you're kind of afraid to act. I don't want to do it. What would happen? But if you don't do it, the work that you were going to do, Emerson calls God's work. And I think that's a clue why self-reliance is a valuable thing. It's because you're kind of a divine spark. It's almost a Stoic idea.
Yeah, those unique thoughts that you have a divinity and truth in them that is accessible only for Emerson, I think, that is accessible and known only by you.
Yeah.
And can't be gotten elsewhere.
Right. And if you are too pusillanimous to do it. You like that word?
I do. Insouciant.
To do it, then that, like, we say this in seminars, you know, that everybody has a unique perspective that we need to hear. And you should be a little bit arrogant, maybe a lot arrogant, and believe that you, in fact, have something to say. But what do you have to believe is true in order to believe the second part? You have to believe that you've got something to say, that your mind is somehow participating in the forms, in divinity, in great things. Hey, he is so much a Platonist.
Yeah, he is. It's fine.
He's a huge Platonist. He probably didn't read Plato until later and then found out that Plato had thought all his thoughts for him.
Yep, I could have told him that, he says. The nonchalance of boys who are sure of a dinner and would disdain as much as a lord to do or say aught to conciliate one is the healthy attitude of human nature. Yeah,
I like that one too. So you're a well-fed kid at dinner.
You don't care.
You just don't care.
Sit up straight. I'll leave.
Yeah. Go into debt and go to college. No, thank you.
Nah.
But everyone's doing it. No.
Get a job, fight to keep it.
Yeah. It's incredibly American.
Yeah, and so we should probably say this is going to be memory, and so somebody's going to tell me I'm wrong. I think this is 1832, I think. It's in New England. It's certainly the first half of the 1800s, and he's a New England man, right? He's a mentor to, and slightly older than, Henry David Thoreau, who later writes Walden. He's in the family tree of the Walt Whitman School of Thought as well, right? He's hanging around with all of those kinds of people and creating this Federalist era art that's new and interesting.
Yeah.
It just feels like that. When I read it, it just feels like Concord, Massachusetts. I mean, I don't know what that was like. I don't have my time machine, but it just feels like Concord, Massachusetts in the 1830s must have felt like.
Nathaniel Hawthorne's down the road,
Yeah.
Emily Dickinson is somewhere out there. I want to fight with him now, and you tell me where I'm wrong.
Okay.
So we have this idea of self-reliance, of go do it yourself, don't care about anything. Is this time-bound in the economics of the age? I was reading, I think it was a book by Stephen Ambrose on Crazy Horse and Custer, and he made a point about the incredible GDP growth in the 19th century, which was, I know you don't care about that, but just for perspective. So nowadays, we're supposed to be happy if we're above 3%. Okay. It was like 35.
I'm like the fat kid at dinner that's already full.
You don't care.
DGAF. No, okay, so is a guy gainfully employed and owning a mercantilist endeavor in the 1890s, cash hand over fist in Boston, happier than RWE in the 1830s? Who's living the good life?
I don't know, but the thing is, you could get up, if you didn't like it, if you're that kid at dinner, you can get up and just start heading west and have a pretty good chance at ending up prosperous.
By the way, let's talk about that. Okay, we're derailed. You've done it.
It's my job.
People talk about our system of government and our Constitution and all this stuff as being wonderful. And maybe our Constitution is wonderful. It's certainly unique and it's very interesting. But it is not but a piece of paper, and it can't keep people from killing me or subjugating me. And they talk about, the wonders of what the United States has done and been in light of that,
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's not that. I think it's that young people could just start walking west and instantly be capitalized. Like if you just walked far enough west, you could have land. You could have a farm just because you walked that far and were willing to work.
Right.
And on the fringes of that, the governmental system for the rest of the country didn't even matter. It was anarchy on the edge. And I think that's where that GDP growth comes from.
Yeah. So my point in bringing this up is, I like it. This essay resounds with me. I'm cheering as I read it, but then I have to fight with myself. And I think, well, are these thoughts for people who live in such times? And so that poor customer service person in China who is afraid to call his own customs office, he can't go west. He can't go east. He can't go anywhere. He can't do anything with any freedom at all.
It's true.
And so does Emerson make sense when you don't have a frontier?
I think it could. Maybe not. Maybe he doesn't, Carl, but I think maybe it could, because if you were, later on here on the third page of one I've got, he says, whoso would be a man must be a nonconformist. And I think that if you're in North America in 2019 and you're 100% willing to be a nonconformist, you can have enough and be way on the fringes of society. You don't have to be that receptionist to have food and shelter and to live your way if you're a nonconformist. But if you want to live the kind of life everyone else lives and have the kinds of things that other people have and do the kinds of things they do, you will have to do all the things they do.
Mm-hmm.
But there is enough here. There is enough. There is plenty if you're willing to not say that you want all of it.
Right.
So while you can't just walk, the Oregon Trail and find free land and dig a well and build a fence, there's enough. There's plenty. There is food. There is shelter. There are ways.
But you might have to be weird.
You're going to have to be weird.
Yeah. I remember when I canceled cable a while back.
So weird.
The shocked reaction from the cable company. Well, do you want this plan? Do you want this plan? No, I don't want a plan. I just want internet. Well, do you want internet with channels? No, I don't want any channels. I don't want any.
Yeah.
What are you, Amish?
I wish.
So there's a line in that paragraph with whoso would be a man must be a nonconformist. There is a possibly problematic quote, which...
No, we don't say problematic. Gosh.
I'm sorry, Scott. There is a quote which deserves some consideration and is probably the inspiration for a great song by the band AC/DC. These impulses may be from below, not from above. I replied, they do not seem to me to be such, but if I am the devil's child, I will live then from the devil.
Yes.
Highway to hell.
I think that he could be smuggling in some relativism and some weirdness there, right?
Right.
He could be. But in the second sentence of that paragraph, I'll just read the first one and the second one. Whoso would be a man must be a nonconformist. He who would gather immortal palms must not be hindered by the name of goodness, but must explore if it be goodness. So he's willing to explore it, but he's not going to let this other clown tell him. And then he's glib because he's Ralph Waldo Emerson. There's a with the parson who's telling him that his impulses may be from below. He's got to slap him down because he's like a metaphysical John Wayne.
Yeah,
he can't stand for it. There's a story.
Can you read that in a John Wayne voice?
I cannot.
If I am the devil's child, I can't do it. But
no, there's a story. I don't know if this is true. I may have told it before on here, but I'll tell it again. Thoreau, I don't think he lived to be 40. I think he died in his 30s. He was certainly not an old man when he died. And there's a story that his aunt was at the bedside, and she says, Henry, have you made your peace with the Lord? And he said, I didn't know we fought. These guys have to be slick with their detractors. They can't help it, you know? When he says that, I don't think he's a whim worshiper. He does believe in an absolute good, and before he lays down the devil's child thing there, he talks about that. He talks about exploring and seeking it.
Yeah. He's using his own nature as a guide. And so this is the big presumption behind the whole thing. We've already mentioned it. You have to have that thought that the individual has that spark of the divine in him. I think.
Well, you have to have that. But he is also couples that with an unspoken idea here, I think, that which is conformed to, like the popular notion, is in fact inauthentic and wrong and false. Mm-hmm. So not only do you have the divine spark thing within you, but that which everyone else does is wrong and bad.
Right. Well, why did they go bad? Why do you have to have...
They avoided the divine spark.
Yeah, this edgy self-reliance. So I got a line highlighted. Your goodness must have some edge to it, else it is none. In other words, if you don't piss somebody off, you're probably not real good.
We know that's true. If there is evil in the world and there are evil people and they're not mad at you, you ain't doing right. By the way, just above that, I love this so much. I hate pathological empathy. I just hate it.
I hadn't noticed
so
Scott.
much.
I never noticed that before.
Fuck. Oh, who'll think of the children? What children? My children? Your children? No, the children. No, I don't think of the children.
Well, they don't want you to think of the children. They want you to feel for the children.
They just want you to feel so they can manipulate you into doing the thing they want you to do, which is what he is warning us about. And he says, for those kinds of ideas, this sort of weird pathological empathy, I call it, he says, thy love afar is spite at home. You got to take care of your business. You got to take care of your people.
Yeah.
You got to take care of your people. And a lot of people would bristle at this, by the way. But he says he's actually talking about abolitionists at that time were worried about what was going on in Barbados. And I'm sure that there were atrocious things happening in Barbados. But Emerson answers those people. He says, go love thy infant, love thy wood chopper, be good-natured and modest, have that grace, and never varnish your hard, uncharitable ambition with this incredible tenderness for these folk. I'll say it, for these black folk 1,000 miles off. I don't think he's being racist there. It's the 1,000 miles. There is other work here that you can find about Thoreau and Emerson, by the way, being abolitionists. But they weren't worried about Barbados.
So what you're doing when you respond to the universal claims of empathy on people you're making yourself feel better. You're not actually necessarily solving anything. So he says, their virtues are penances. Their works are done as an apology or extenuation of their living in the world. So you do a good action not because, especially when you do something like you give money to the college,
right,
which they have enough, they don't need it from me, or you're sending money to Barbados or something. Who knows if it's even going to get there?
But oh boy, you got a warm fuzzy though.
Their virtues are penances is another way of saying virtue signaling.
Yeah. Emerson would say, go give the money to thy wood chopper.
Yeah.
There's a class of persons to whom, by all spiritual affinity, I am bought and sold. For them, I will go to prison. So there are some people that he'll go to jail for. And these guys did go to jail, for their beliefs, I say these guys, famously it's Thoreau. But Emerson, if I'm not mistaken, Thoreau owed a tax bill, Carl. He owed a tax bill, and he said, I'm not going to pay it because you've got this Mexican-American war going on, and I don't pay for that kind of business. And they threw him in jail, and he was going to sit there. And if I'm not mistaken, Emerson paid that bill, and they threw him out of jail. And it pissed him off really bad.
He wanted to stay? Or he was mad because Emerson paid?
He was mad because he didn't want them to have the money.
Yeah. That's civil disobedience, right? Is that the essay?
He writes civil disobedience, but I don't think the whole backstory is in there. If I'm not mistaken, though, friends paid the bill and got him out, but I believe it was Emerson. Somebody will check me and send that back.
It'd be like Socrates being mad at his friends for paying a fine.
What I must do is all that concerns me, not what people think.
Yeah. Let's talk about the opinions of everybody. He says, maybe one more paragraph down, it is easy in the world to live after the world's opinion. It is easy in solitude to live after our own. But the great man is he who in the midst of the crowd keeps with perfect sweetness the independence of solitude.
That's lovely, isn't it?
It is. It is. You got three states there. You could be in the world doing what everybody else does, which, that's my reaction to that. But, I do it some,
Oh, gosh, we've got to. We've got to go along to get along a little bit.
Mm-hmm. We have it is easy in solitude to live after our own. We went to the beach yesterday because it was warm here. And we took some of the kids because that's what homeschooling's all about. If it's 88 degrees, you go to the beach. And the kids went back and built sandcastles, and I just stayed out in the water. Heard my wife back on the beach. The kids said, what's Daddy doing out there? He's in his fortress of solitude. And I was just out there I was close enough I could go help them if help needed to be done. But there I was, and nobody was around me, and I could think my own thoughts, and my cell phone doesn't work in water. So it was back in the, I couldn't do any of that. And I was just out in the middle of the water. And it was marvelous. It's easy when you're by yourself to be an individual. It's hard when you're with everyone else. It's great if you can do it when you're with everyone else. But otherwise, you end up being the kind of person he talks about in the next paragraph where he says, if I know your sect, I anticipate your argument.
Right.
Where if I know what team you're on, I know everything you're going to say. And, you start to end, well, what's the point of conversation?
Well, I agree. There are sort of sectarian political thinkers, and you can see an issue of the day and know precisely where some of those people are going to come down on those issues. You don't even have to ask. You don't even have to talk to them.
I am almost never surprised, and I'm trying to think of a case when I was, almost never surprised by anything any of the pundit class says on either side.
Right.
I know what they're going to say. I know what team they're on. I know what their argument's going to be, which leads to the suspicion that they're not thinking their own thoughts. Their thoughts are being thought for them by somebody else. And they might agree, but they didn't think it. If you think it first, then you might think something new.
Yuck.
Yeah. Here's my favorite line. Foolish consistency is a hobgoblin of little minds. There's some good stuff right before then. So you're talking about memory and about what would make you not be a nonconformist. And there's reasons why people don't want to do it. People will be upset with you. People will be displeased with you. You might get deplatformed. You might be not the right sort of person. That's one thing. People are worried about that. People are absolutely worried about that. I told you this story. I had a kid in metaphysics class who didn't want to go to the conclusion that his own arguments led him to.
Right.
Because he was afraid of being incorrect. He said that in the class. It was stunning to me. That was like a few years before I quit teaching, and it was down.
You quit that day, but you actually resigned years later.
Yeah, it was hard to get people to talk towards the end. Hard to get people to have any kind of opinion. We do much better at Online Great Books. It's so much more fun. But there's that, right? So you're worried that people might not like the opinion you have. The thought that is your own, that you come to through your own divine spark or whatever it is, your Platonic recollection, whatever. That thing that you come up with. Let me do it in Socratic terms. The child that you're giving birth to, you're ready to stifle it because you're afraid somebody else might think it's ugly.
I bristle against that stuff. We did a Barbell Logic podcast this morning with Dr. David Pewter. He's a psychiatrist, and that show will be going out pretty soon. In fact, it'll probably come out Monday the 12th, I think, whatever day that is. I'm the color guy on that podcast. Maybe I am here too. I think the listeners of that show in particular see me as kind of curmudgeonly and whatever. But Pewter said that it was endearing because they know I never lie.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's true. I don't think I ever lie. Sometimes I say stuff that isn't right, but I didn't lie. I did my best with it,
Yeah.
And man, there's a lot of people. I mean, there is a group of people that enjoy that about me, but there's a much larger group of people that genuinely don't like me. And it's because of that.
Well, I don't know if we've measured.
If we've measured, what do you mean?
Yeah, like if we've taken a poll, but who cares about such things? Look, let's derail for a moment. I want to talk about what happens if somebody on a podcast says something that let's not even say disagree, because disagree implies thought, okay, that you don't like. They utter something that they believe to be true that you don't like. So is your reaction, that's a horrible person? I must ban him. I must never listen to him again. I must write to his employers, write an email saying, I didn't like what you said, Or what do you do when you encounter somebody who says something different from you? Maybe you respond and you say, well, okay, so this other human being who has every bit as much intellect as I do and every bit as much access to reality as I do sees things differently. That's exciting. For me, that's exciting. When I say something in the seminar and somebody disagrees with me, I perk up. Oh,
but you smuggled something in there.
What did I smuggle?
You believe in this access to an objective reality.
I do, right?
And so does Emerson. And if the other person that your interlocutor doesn't, QED, fisticuffs.
Right. McIntyre talks about this in After Virtue. If you lose rationality, then all you get is teams, and all you're left with is violence in the end.
And by the way, that's my other problem with empathy. We're back to that. Like it's not rational.
Right. You can't argue about it.
It gives us sense data about the person we are in intercourse with that we can then use to apply our rationality to.
Mm-hmm.
But that's all it is.
Yeah.
It's
it's like, I'll tell you something. The best flavor of ice cream is vanilla. Do you agree?
You're right. You're correct.
What if you
100%.
didn't agree? What if I said chocolate?
I would vote to take everything away from you.
But so the thing is, am I wrong? Let's say I genuinely think chocolate's the best. Can you tell me that I'm wrong, that I prefer chocolate? No, it's preference, and empathy is in that same realm. It's emotional. It's taste. It's the things that make you feel warm fuzzies. It's not something that is public. By public, I mean a public object is something that's real that we can both look at and make some kind of judgment about. Empathy is my private feelings that I'm making determinative on your reason. And I think that's like making public policy over ice cream flavors.
Well, Pewter would argue with you about your definition there, but he says that empathy is the ability to take perspective from the other person's point of view and to be aware of their emotional state, maybe.
I guess what I'm talking about is it's a fallacy in logic. It's the appeal to emotion.
Now, when you and I are sitting in a room together having a cup of coffee and talking about our families or things that matter to us, empathy between the two of us is very important and helps you and I become better friends and to come to greater understanding, etc. And that's two people in the same room. And it's important, but you can't have empathy with a group because a group doesn't exist any more than a dozen exists. A dozen is 12. A group is a bunch.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it doesn't exist. You can't have empathy with that group. So when people try to get you to ring the empathy bell for people, it's pure rhetoric. It's just pure manipulation. And that's, I think, that's
right. So,
but back to Emerson. These guys, Thoreau and Emerson, in my mind, are just intertwined like the Trinity. You know, it's the Bayeux head of New England transcendentalists. Yeah. He talks about this weird reverence for our past act or word.
Yeah.
But you said, or bro, you've changed. Like, yeah. Mm-hmm. I did. I damn sure did.
You thought something 10 years ago. Although, honestly, Scott, you think the same things you thought 10 years ago.
I used to be a anarcho-libertarian, and I'm not anymore.
Oh, well, I was going by the papers you showed me that you wrote years ago.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of the things I have. A lot of the views I've had have been the same, but there's been a lot that have changed. I'll tell you what. I just finished reading Hobbes' Leviathan. Have you ever read that thing?
Yes.
Holy smoke! What a book. I hated his guts for 50 pages. For 50 pages of that book, I thought, you're wrong. And by the way, he's wrong in the first 50 pages. Like, his metaphysics is weird. He makes up an epistemology. It's just weird. But ultimately, he doesn't believe in a greatest good, which I don't like. And so he would have us govern for damage control, essentially. Like, he would have us govern to maintain a minimum state of, he doesn't call it well-being, but just of nonviolence.
Mm-hmm.
And I would like to think that we could govern for higher purposes than just not killing each other with sticks, you know. But as I read that thing, I mean, I completely changed over the 2.5, 3 weeks it took me to read that darn book. I completely changed on Hobbes, for sure. And I changed on government in some ways as well, even though I didn't buy everything he said.
Yeah, so you didn't find somebody who disagreed with you and say, this is a bad person, and throw him on the ash heap. You actually encountered him and dealt with his thought and came up with something useful out of it?
I did.
Wow.
I did.
That's cool.
Thomas Hobbes made love to my mind. And in doing so, I was changed.
I love the title. That's a great title for a book. Leviathan.
I know. On the manner and form of, it's got one of these long subtitles like all those books did.
The phrase that I like, he says, why drag about this corpse of your memory? Which is an interesting thought that your memory is a corpse. I'm not so sure it's exactly a corpse. He says, leave your theory as Joseph his coat in the hand of the harlot and flee.
Beautiful.
And then the line that I remember that stuck in my brain back in the 80s, a foolish consistency is the hobgoblin of little minds, adored by little statesmen and philosophers and divines. It rhymes. Right?
Yep.
You don't care. Like, Socrates contradicts himself all the time. He goes where his active thought leads him. And if it's not what he said in the beginning of the dialogue, it's fine. It's okay.
Yep.
Be confident in your capacity to touch reality. And if you touch it on one side of it, it's like, think of the elephant. You touch it on one side, it feels like one thing. You touch it on the other, it feels like something else.
That's right.
It's okay.
It is okay.
It's okay to be yourself. It's okay to think.
Carl, as a 14 to 20-year-old person, I was so heavily influenced and formed and molded by Whitman, Emerson, and Thoreau that, you were talking about Walker Percy being a big part of who you are.
Mm-hmm.
These guys are a big part of me. And I can't talk about one without talking about all of them. Consistency, Whitman said, I think it's "Oh Captain, Do I contradict myself? Very well, then. I contain multitudes.
Yeah.
Internet assholery is full of people yelling hypocrite.
Right.
But, our experience is complex. We are works in progress, and we are not internally consistent from top to bottom. And sometimes that happens, and it's okay. We need to try to be consistent, right? We should seek out consistency in thought and metaphysics, epistemology, and build up a platform of thought that we can stand on. But sometimes we have to tear things down and rebuild them, and sometimes you're not right. Sometimes you haven't thought it all through.
Socrates talks about this in his Apology. So the beginning of his method is to find where there's inconsistency in the thought of another. And the people that hung around with him learned how to do this. It's easy enough to do it. You just comb through people's statements and say, well, this doesn't match that. Ha ha, you don't know what you're talking about. And that's what internet jerks would do. But they don't do the second part. The whole point of Socrates tearing down what Meno thinks virtue is to figure out what virtue is.
Right. It's not about kicking Meno's butt on Twitter.
Right. What would Meno's Twitter be?
That's so weird. I got Whitman wrong, by the way. It's Song of Myself. Do I contradict myself? Very well, then. I contradict myself. I am large. I contain multitudes.
Yeah. I think you did pretty
Lovely.
Well. Yeah.
Song of Myself.
Yeah.
Distinctly American.
There's so much good stuff that came out of that very small region in American literature.
They could walk to each other's houses.
Yeah.
Can you imagine a Roman writing something like that? Song of Myself, Self-Reliance.
No, I don't think so.
Civil Disobedience, Walden.
No.
Amazing.
No, it's distinctly American. What do we mean by that? Go do something. Don't wait for somebody else to tell you. Go do it.
You must till your lot.
No, there's a bit...
And there's something divine and true about tilling your lot. That's the American thing. It's not about bootstraps necessarily, right? It's not necessarily just about self-responsibility and hard work. Is there something divine in doing good with that which you were given?
Right. He tells a story about the sot, I guess that means a drunk, and he's carried to the Duke's house, and then he wakes up, and everybody treats him like the Duke. And he says, this story owes its popularity to the fact that it symbolizes so well the state of man, who is in the world a sort of sot, but now and then wakes up, exercises his reason, and finds himself a true prince.
Yeah.
I mostly share his starting point, which is that the human being is something special and irreplaceable and everything. I remember my daughter told me once, but you hate people, she thought. I was like, no, I don't. But you complain about them all the time. Yeah?
It's because of what they're capable of and they don't do.
Exactly. It's because they could do more, and I want them to, because it's like you said once on a podcast, I think you said, Bubba, I love you more than you do.
God damn, that makes people mad.
I think everybody listening, you're a prince, you're a princess, you are sovereign. It's like the whole motive for Online Great Books. You can read this stuff. You can do it. You don't need somebody else to tell you what to think. Think it first, and then go see what they thought. Maybe you don't know what divinity is. That's a hard question. I'm not sure I know either. But wherever it is, that's one place you find it, is in human reason.
Yeah. Yeah, no matter what your beliefs are, you have to think there's something special. I think that you have to think there's something special and unique about human reason. There's nothing else like it. It's maybe the only thing that there's no analog for in any other species or system.
Right. And it's where we end up. I mean, eventually, you stick with us long enough, you're going to read Nicomachean Ethics. And Aristotle tells you everything you need to know to be a successful gentleman in Athens. And you think, this is good. And then in the end, he throws in contemplation. It's nothing without that. Thinking thoughts, thinking the best things you can think.
It's play acting without that.
Yeah.
Karl.
Yes.
He says, I hope in these days we have heard the last of conformity and consistency. Let the words be gazetted and ridiculous henceforward. Instead of the gong for dinner, let us hear a whistle from the Spartan Five. Let us never bow and apologize more. A great man is coming to eat at my house. I do not wish to please him. I wish that he should wish to please me.
Go one more sentence.
I will stand here for humanity, and though I would make it kind, I would make it true.
Right.
Let us affront and reprimand the smooth mediocrity and squalid contentment of the times, and hurl in the face of custom and trade and office the fact which is the upshot of all of history, that there is a great responsible thinker and actor working wherever a man works. Wherever a man works. That a true man belongs to no other time or place, but is the center of things. I mean, I'm getting choked up.
Mm-hmm.
I think that these men in Dickinson and these New Englanders at that time were standing on the threshold of something entirely new. The dust had settled from this Revolutionary War. We'd already had the bloodless coup that got rid of the Articles of Confederation. And we were on this new era, and I think that he really did believe they had heard the last of conformity and consistency. And these are actually Englishmen, not too far removed, right?
Right.
And they're coming out of all that English class stuff, and they're hoping that that's gone. And by the way, the Puritans are up there stomping people's asses still. This ain't too far from where the witch trials were, where Cotton Mather was, and all of that, you know. And he feels like they're on the threshold of hearing the last of this conformity. And we're more conformist than ever. That freedom that those people felt and wrote about and saw transcendentalism in, it's gone. We don't have it anymore. We're more conformist than ever. I got in an argument with a friend. I mean, when I say argument, it's one of our good kinds of arguments, right? Nobody's mad. We were discussing freedom the other day, and freedom has come to mean just endless choice.
Yeah.
And it doesn't go to the state of the person who is the chooser. I haven't quite gotten all my thoughts worked out around this. Like, we have all kinds of choice. I mean, I bet there are 95 jelly flavors at the little grocery store I can walk to from here.
Right.
But conformity is on the ascendancy, consistency is on the ascendancy, and even though there's choice in front of us, like true freedom of action seems to be collapsing. And when I read this, I mean, I almost couldn't get through it.
Well, it's like a glimpse of a lost country, of a lost kingdom.
It's not like a glimpse. It is. It's gone. They round your ass up when you're 5 and they put you in school until you're 18, and then they round you up again and they put you in another one or whatever, and then you file TPS reports, and when you're 65, they give you some medicine. And then you live your 70, and then they throw dirt on you.
Yeah, but you got to watch a lot of series on Netflix.
Right.
And there are a whole lot of thoughts that popped into my head. He made me think about Kierkegaard a lot, believe it or not. I'm a strange person.
You are strange. Has anyone ever said Emerson made him think about Kierkegaard?
Well, my mind is twisted and complicated.
You contain multitudes.
I do, because if I have a complaint here is that in this particular essay, I think he's got to do some work on, I hate this word, but he's got to do some work on community, brotherhood, friendship, fraternity, maybe, whatever you want to call it.
I agree, but this is the American project. It's the personal. That's what it is. Right, wrong, or indifferent. That's what it was.
Right. So that gets me thinking about Kierkegaard, who also needed to do some work on that. But then I start thinking about Kierkegaard and the varieties of despair and the ways in which people have given up hope and they don't even know they have. And you do that life where you're worried about the Twitter mobs. You know, you don't ever say anything that you ever think except that somebody else thought it first. And you're happy to, sit and binge on Netflix. What's the point of that? When you get to the end of your life, have you actually lived? Did you ever think a thought that somebody else didn't think for you first?
To sit in front of the screen and to take in those images and to hear the sounds coming from the speaker is not a great deal different than having a wire jacked in. It's just not authentic. I was talking to McKay the other day, and Brett is always saying, Hambrick, the internet's not real. And it's not. The only thing is real is reality, the things outside, the things that we can interact with,
Yeah.
Newspapers aren't real either.
What's real? The people that show up at your gym, that you train, that you talk to, your family, your wife.
The ideas are real.
I agree. I think so too.
But the ideas and the content has to be separated from the internet because it's not real. The internet's not real. If a bunch of people on the internet are mad at me, nothing happens unless one of them shows up at my door.
Mm-hmm.
When I snuff them out.
Yeah.
But until then, it's just all nothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a role-playing game.
I'm hoping we're going to read Marcel at some point, and I was prepping for him. And he said something about the problem with technology. We don't develop the virtues to handle the tech before we get it.
You don't know you need them.
Everybody's got phones. Everyone's got, 24-hour access to this hive mind. Maybe there's a purpose for this, but we haven't figured it out yet, or at least a decent way to do it. What you should do is download the Online Great Books podcast and leave us a nice review and hear our content. And then turn it off for a while and go live your life, go talk to real people, or go out in the middle of Lake Michigan in your fortress of solitude and think some thoughts for a while, and then maybe come back.
I wrote a little crappy essay that I put at scotthambrick.com, the title of which is "It's All Been BS Since Antibiotics."
Yeah, I read that.
Yeah, most of this technology isn't leaving us freer, and it isn't making us live a better life. I mean, there's just been a very few little pieces of technology that have made all of the difference. Harnessing fire, the knife, writing, antibiotics. I mean, there's a very, very short list, and most of the others, I think, are less good, than doing without them. Confusing the choice or the ease of obtaining with the good life or true freedom is wrong.
Yeah.
Emerson didn't have electricity. He didn't have a typewriter. And he didn't live terribly long. These guys didn't live to be 100 years old. But he lived deeply and fully in a community, by the way. He had friends. Anyway, I think the freedom is decreasing.
Right. So if you want to be self-reliant, what can you do?
Well, you have to, according to Emerson, trust the contents of your own mind, act based on the contents of your mind and your own revelation. So I think you have to be a person of action in that way and let the rest hang.
Mm-hmm. I want to add something to that. I think you probably need to turn stuff off.
Yeah.
For a while. Maybe you go the whole way. Maybe you go one day a week. I remember back, I would tell, this is a long time ago, I'd say to students, why don't you do this? When you drive home today, because they're all commuters, don't turn on the radio. And nobody wanted to do it. What are you talking? I can't, what? Not have sound in my ear holes?
Right. Because
when it's silent, strange things start to happen. You start to think thoughts. And thinking thoughts is scary. They might lead you places. You might have to change your life if you think some thoughts. So I better turn the radio on and listen to, I don't even know who's on the radio anymore, but lest I mistakenly think a thought.
Emerson says, I like the silent church before the service begins better than any preaching. That's what he's saying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I like the music. That's yeah, this is a good essay. So
it's so gorgeous. So gorgeous, Karl.
I think you, gentle listener, ought to go read it. Read Emerson, pick up some Thoreau, read a few Emily Dickinson poems, read some Nathaniel Hawthorne, get in touch with these guys.
Moby Dick.
Oh, that's so good. I reread that last year. That is so good.
It's one of my favorites.
Yeah. There's a scene in there where the speaking of being a lord of creation, being sovereign, Emerson's idea of being sovereign, where Ishmael is standing up on the mast of the ship He's perched up on the mast of the ship, and he sees all of the world laid at his feet below him, and it's this glorious transcendent moment. Like, that's what a human is. It's Ishmael on the top of the Pequod. And it's so good. You should read that, too.
Yeah, it's so good. Emerson, he is a Platonist. Self-existence is the attribute of the supreme cause. Whoops, there's a little Plato. Or I'm sorry, a little Aristotle there.
Mm-hmm.
And it constitutes the measure of good by the degree in which it enters into all lower forms.
Yeah, and so if you're not a Platonist, what do you do with Emerson? Well, if he was a Platonist, he probably thought himself into it. And then when he encountered Plato, he said, yeah.
Let us not rove. Let us sit at home with the cause. Let us stun and astonish the intruding rabble of men and books and institutions by a simple declaration of the divine fact. Bid the invaders take the shoes from off their feet, for God is here within. Let our simplicity judge them, and our docility to our own law demonstrate the poverty of nature and fortune beside our native riches. Let our simplicity judge them. I mean, that's American.
Mm-hmm.
You can be a pipe fitter and you get to go vote.
Right.
You can be the janitor and be on the school board. Let our simplicity judge them.
Excellent.
He loved people.
You love people.
I do. And I hate them for the things they don't do.
Yeah, I agree.
I had this piece cut out in my wallet for about 10 years. If our young men miscarry in their first enterprises, they lose all heart. I may not be able to read it. If the young merchant fails, men say he is ruined. If the finest genius studies at one of our colleges and is not installed in an office within 1 year afterwards in the cities or suburbs of Boston or New York, it seems to his friends and to himself that he is right in being disheartened and in complaining the rest of his life. A sturdy lad can't hardly get through it. From New Hampshire or Vermont, who in turn tries all the professions, who teams it, farms it, peddles, keeps a school, preaches, edits a newspaper, goes to Congress, buys a township and so forth in successive years, and always, like a cat, falls on his feet, is worth 100 of these city dolls. He walks abreast with his days. It feels no shame in not studying a profession, for he does not postpone his life, but lives already. He has not one chance, but 100 chances.
Yeah, so if you can't see him, this is there should be a hashtag crying like Hamburg.
Oh, can't take it.
It's
people don't want that for young people anymore.
Right.
That's not expected. They're not allowed to screw up and be eclectic and make their way.
Yeah.
Damn it.
Yeah. Go out and be weird and show us the glories of your weirdness. And find something that nobody else has found. Or maybe you don't, but do the thing that you do gloriously.
And by the way, the only thing you said, you'll find the thing no one else has found. The only thing that no one else has found is the thing inside you.
Right.
Everything else is available to everyone else.
Right.
Shakespeare will never be made by the study of Shakespeare. Do that which is assigned you, and you cannot hope too much or dare too much. Or you can go take the fucking classes they signed up for you when you turn, 5.
Yeah.
And you can be one of 6 things. You can be a fireman, a teacher, a soldier, a police, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, fuck.
Remember we did Nietzsche and his complaints about education? None of those great German poets were made by the schools.
No.
Nobody made Shakespeare. Shakespeare made Shakespeare.
I didn't know he upset me that much.
Yeah, I think you guys ought to go read this. Tell us if we're wrong, and it'll be great, because I want to know. Because I want to know your own divine spark. It's interesting to me.
I'm just wrung out like a rag.
Yeah. What are we going to do next after this?
Well, while I'm looking that up, let me say a few other things that people might think is fun. Friend of mine, actually, he's an online coaching client. His name's David Aiken. He's a retired cardiologist, and he sent me a poem. He said, "You need to read this, The One Hoss Shay by Oliver Wendell Holmes." And it was written in 1855. And he's a New Englander. You know, he went to Harvard and he was walking the same paths as these guys were. And it's a little poem. It's a little logical poem. It's American. It's about ingenuity and logic, and it's cool. Yeah, go read that. It's fun. The next thing you and I read, Karl, is going to be Gabriel Marcel's
Man Against Mass Society. Yeah. We're going to do some French continental philosophy for a little break from Emerson. So the very non-American.
I can't cry like this. I can't continue crying like this.
Yeah.
And then if you're interested in it, I think clearly this was a big deal to me for a long time. A few years ago, I found this series of picture books by a guy named D.B. Johnson. And it's about a Henry the Bear. It's Thoreau. And there are about 5 of these. Henry hikes to Fitchburg. Henry climbs a mountain. Henry builds a cabin. Henry works. And Henry's Night. And they're just these beautiful impressionist style illustrations, and they tell stories about Henry David Thoreau. Most of them are taken from letters from Emerson or from Walden itself. And if you've got kids, that's mighty fine. Distinctly American.
Yeah.
So
you know what I'm thinking? This is like Hercules. This is the age of heroes. That we're not up to them.
No. Nope. Well, there's another podcast. We laughed, we cried, we got mad, we ran the gamut, or at least I did. Yeah. So go read Self-Reliance. It's even in a small paperback, it's not going to be more than maybe 30 pages or something like that. It's a fairly short read and well worth it. Hey, when you first, by the way, I was going to talk about this. Boy, there's some long sentences in there. He didn't mind putting 6 commas in a sentence at all, and he doesn't mind not using paragraph breaks. What would a freshman comp teacher do to him? Really?
What would Grammarly do to him?
Oh, my gosh. I mean, so the first time you read it, it's just darn near word salad. Because it's long sentences, lots of clauses, lots of subordinate clauses.
You might want to read it out loud.
Yeah.
You know, go into your fortress of solitude or read it for your family. Just read it out loud.
I couldn't. I would just... I couldn't do it. Well, there you go. We're going to read Man Against Mass Society by Gabriel Marcel. We're going to cover chapters 1 through 3 for our next show. So if any of you guys are lunatic enough to read along with us, go get that thing. And we'll talk to you guys in another week or so. Thanks.